and well-known tools and systems could impact the future digitalization efficiencies and product offerings in the structured products platforms. So we have four kind of main topics today. The first is assessing the impact of digitalization on the way industry operates and communicates. The second is discussing the importance of platforms, what they can offer, and how they assist both buy and sell side to improve their processes. The third is understanding the industry needs and feedback and how platforms can answer those, supporting and streamlining distribution processes. And the final is analyzing the importance of data security compliance in the digital area. We'll try to get through all four topics, and I think we will. But once again, we're going to keep the panel very open, and our speakers who will introduce themselves in a quick sec, have provided us with some great questions, but they all fold along with really answering those topics. And once again, going outside the box a bit and thinking about things that certainly are on people's minds, and that I think will make this a very lively and informative panel discussion. So I will ask our four panelists to introduce themselves quickly. I'll start with Joanna. Joanna, would you mind giving everyone a quick intro and background on who you are, where you came from, and where you are today, please?
Certainly. Thanks, Pat, for hosting us and for moderating this panel. And thanks to SRP for the opportunity to speak with all of you today. I'm Joanna Kanakis. I'm the head of enterprise sales at Halo Investing. We are a Chicago-based startup focused on structured notes and protective investing broadly. I'm about 4 years old, and I actually came from the listed derivative space. So grew up on a trade desk at a French broker-dealer that ended up being acquired by Crédit Agricole and then subsequently Société Générale. And when I left the investment banking side about 2 years ago to join Halo, was running our distribution in the Midwest and in LATAM for all sort of prime brokerage services. So knew kind of the options market underneath structured notes, was structuring options packages for institutional investors, but saw the complete revolution of transacting and management on the listed side, and kind of realized the opportunity that sat within the structured note side, having lived and grown up inside a capital markets division of an investment bank. Pleasure to be here.
Thanks, Joanna. Thank you. Brady?
Yeah, hi everyone. So I'm Brady Beals. I'm the director of sales and product development for Luma. A bit about Luma. We were spun out of actually a wholesaling firm I was part of a few years ago. So for me, coming from kind of the background of a wholesaler of structured products and being involved with really the exchange of information through emails and through phone calls of structuring deals, launching deals, and so to sort of see that from the old days, if you will, to a platform where all of that occurs electronically through automatic exchanges of requests that go through to issuers and automatic responses from issuers has been really exciting for me. Luma itself, really, we started out in the, I guess, on the wire side in the US. We've expanded, obviously, into other channels in the US, into Latin America and Europe as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Brady. John, how about yourself?
Sure thing. Thanks, Pat, for moderating today. John Ramirez, I'm with Raymond James. This is my 14th, 15th year with the firm. We are, for those of you that aren't familiar with Raymond James, we're a large regional financial services firm here in the US. A little over 8,000 advisors, 2,800 offices around the US, and over $1 trillion in client assets. So pretty good sized regional financial services firm. And I work in the structured investments department, really focused at the very end distribution line. So I work with financial advisors and their clients, primarily sort of out in the field.
Perfect. And last but not least, Henry.
Thanks, Pat. Hi, everybody. My name is Henry Schwartz. I am head of product intelligence at SIBO Global Markets. My background is very different. I feel like I'm a stowaway in an SRP conference. I've been in listed equity derivatives for pushing 30 years. Started an options data firm about 15 years ago, and we were acquired by SIBO just last summer. So this is actually a really interesting, just hearing what you guys are kind of up to, and kind of there's there's some really interesting parallels to the way the listed options market has evolved. And so, you know, I've never traded a structured note in my life, but I've traded millions of option contracts. So I hope I can bring kind of a different perspective.
Thanks, Henry. So this is kind of a broad question and it's a broad topic, but let's start with this: assessing the impact of digitalization on the way industry operates and communicates. Henry, why don't we start with you? You know, what are your thoughts around that? You know, with SIBO, you know, what has digitalization meant for you folks? Obviously, it's a core part of your business. You know, how are you guys thinking about structured products and digitalization? And is SIBO actually a participant? Are they looking at reaching into that space? I think, you know, the business has always been very institutionally driven, but do you see verticals on the retail side that would fold into your current business model? And once again, how do you see that impact go through your systems?
Sure. So, I mean, automation and electronification of the entire kind of workflow for equity derivatives, you know, has been driving this incredible growth. I do an annual state of the industry type of presentation, and you know, the part that kind of people always go, wow, is where you see the volume explode in listed options when things really became electronic around the 2000. And so, you know, and ever since it's continued to, you know, continue to see huge growth. So, and you know, it's an interesting question because over the last year and a half, the industry's taken a huge leap in terms of retail involvement in listed options. I don't think you could possibly miss the headlines on kind of the Robin Hood effect in the listed world. So, you know, SIBO is it's funny, they probably get mad at me, but hopefully, I know that a couple of people are listening. Hi, Bill. SIBO is a technology company. So, you know, we trade options, but, you know, I can tell you after being here for a year and a half, it's technology all the time. So, you know, I think we're basically digging into anything that that will benefit from kind of more efficient execution, and you know, we can kind of get into some of the information and transparency aspects of things as well.
Got it. Yeah, perfect. You know, Brady, with Luma, I mean, you guys are really focused on this space at a very deep technological and digital, you know, kind of way. So how do you see the impact on the way that things are operating? You know, how people are communicating, and where do you kind of where do you guys fit into that, and what do you think, you know, the current state is, and where do you think it's kind of headed?
Yeah, no, and to sort of piggyback on Henry's comments, the transparency of how structured products are originated has really been transformed over the last 2 or 3 years. So traditionally, you know, as I mentioned during my introduction, the email process, knowing who to reach out to, it always being kind of ambiguous as far as what the embedded fees were, or even fees that were printed on documents. You don't really know until after the note is issued. What I've seen occur, at least here at Luma over the last couple of years, through automation, which includes automatic pricing from issuers where you actually get a response back within seconds as opposed to hours, has really transformed how advisors, how desks approach when they're thinking about launching a new deal, when they're thinking about when the right time might be to look at pricing, when they're thinking about always in the back of, I think folks who are on the buy side, not overwhelming issuers with too many responses. All of those questions kind of go away, and they can really focus on what's the best deal for the client in this context, and what's going to be the most, I guess, advantageous time to move forward with the deal. That process has really gone from what used to be a matter of days to really a matter of hours, if not minutes in certain cases. What occurs after that with order entry, with automating booking trades, approving individual orders, technology has really streamlined that entire process. And I think it's only kind of at its infancy. I think you're going to see even more efficiencies where, you know, it almost becomes like a listed option, just with the ease of how you can transact.
Yeah, perfect. And so, John, I mean, at Raymond James, you know, you're closely, tied into the Salesforce. How do you see, Luma, Simon, obviously Halo Investing, these new platforms? How do you see that impact filter through Ray J and your RIAs and others there who are looking at these new solutions and new platforms and systems?
Yeah, so it's been a quantum leap. The last couple of years, I think a little over 2 years ago, we adopted the Simon system and implemented it throughout. Obviously we were in the development stage well before that, but a little over 2 years on the ground implementation with the Salesforce, and it's been a quantum leap. Part of it, really, in the beginning, we're all creatures of habit, right? And so we basically came out of the dark ages and fast forwarded to like version 4.0 or 5.0 from a technological perspective, and we still got a ton of pushback from advisors, right? Just because something was changing, right? We had to do something differently, and we, as humans, I guess we tend to push back on that. So I would tell you that the advance, the amount of information that's now at an advisor's fingertips that they're now ultimately able to share with their end client is huge. In the past, you'd be wanting to recommend a note on the books. You'd bought some time ago, and from a performance perspective, from a back testing perspective, very, very difficult to sort of decipher what these things were. And nowadays, and much like Luma, I'm sure, hit a button on the Simon system. It gives you probably every piece of information you'd ever want, plus some. So as far as empowering advisors and ultimately clients, we've moved dramatically here over the last few years.
Yeah, fair enough. Thanks. And so, Joanna, I've gone through the demo of the Halo solution before, and once again, to my opening statement and remarks, how back in the early '90s, structured notes and products, the ones that we used to kind of roll out to the retail sales forces, it was a real syndication effort. John, I'm sure you remember that. You alluded to it. That really is the Stone Age. And looking at what Halo has created, this is an incredible solution. Connecting advisors directly with the issuers. Maybe you could talk a bit about that. What it was like to get those advisors on the platform. I'm sure it was a very difficult process, changing people's attitudes, as John said, taking people out of the Stone Age into the the world of once again, from flip phone to smartphone. It's not an easy thing, and we'll touch on my area, which is even harder, actually, the institutional space, because it's still stuck in the dark ages. But yeah, so how did that go for Halo, and how did Halo assess that, and where do you kind of see things falling today as far as technological evolution, digitalization of that process?
Yeah, I think firstly, we led and sort of saw this move towards customs that has happened over the last year and a half or so. Halo was talking about that 3 or 4 years ago, and we're kind of laughed off of panels like this because people said, oh, there's no way that we're going to let our advisors buy custom structures. We love these set deals. So we really led the market in that direction, and the infrastructure that we built around that, connectivity at this point to practically 10 pricers from the issuing banks that have that capability. So we've really been a driver of empowering the technology that sits inside issuing banks to come out, and been first users and first adopters of that technology. And then when you think about kind of the landscape of who's buying these structured notes, I think a lot of folks, again, 3 to 4 years ago, were saying, my gosh, I can't ever let my financial advisor to have those self-driving tools themselves because, I'm concerned about the framework and the barriers around what we want people to access. The reality is technology can solve for that. You can create a calculator that won't price structures that are not approved. And so there are really sophisticated, streamlined tools on the front end to ensure that networks of financial advisors are comfortable. And then as we take this forward, what we've done is, because we were sort of leading this space and have pretty good traction and data around that, think then too about what you can do in terms of knowing where the market has priced these structures. So we now have a database of information to help empower the advisor to say, oh, okay, this thing was pricing at 4.5% last week. Right now it's pricing 6%. Maybe this is the time to purchase that kind of structure, and notifications out to trade desk, to home office, to the advisor directly based on permissioning that can help enable that. So again, lots of really powerful tools, but all in the construct of safe environments for the network that we're speaking to. And in terms of your question about digitization, Pat, I mean, I think some folks touched on it kind of within the separate purview. Overarching, I just think the move towards digitization empowers both issuers to create structures more efficiently and more effectively, right? It gives them better data on their own desktops, which has been pretty eye-opening to see what that landscape looks like. And then it also helps the end client be able to serve or the end advisor to serve their clients more effectively. So to be able to optimize strikes and jumps in volatility, right? To Henry's point, the reason that listed options have grown so much in adoption is because people are able to access the market immediately and act on volatility when it strikes in the market. Structured notes have the exact same pattern. And so we need better digital tools when volatility strikes so that people can get better yields for their end clients, right? It's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy in that. And that then closed-end system serves better tracking data on the front end and empowering people to make the right financial decisions. And then to Brady's point, on the back end, we've got to make this OTC clunky bond not settle, deliver, and report like an OTC bond. And there are actually ways to do that. There are partnerships with custodians that you can do with fixed messaging and the rest that we're driving towards.
Cool, that's great. John, back to your statement about RIAs and changing of attitudes and getting people to adopt new solutions. I mean, education is critical to increasing adoption. So how do the platforms help with that in your experience, and what challenges do you think still remain?
So our firm's sort of education module that advisors are required to pass in order to be able to do structured product business is all sort of satisfied through the Simon system. They have a series of different videos that they've created. Many of those are approved for end client use, and sort of all of our CE is surrounded around those courses that they have on the Simon system. So I think that ultimately, by sort of requiring advisors to educate themselves on the basics of the products, pass an assessment on the basics of the products, I think ultimately we're sort of teaching them how to educate the end client by sort of doing something like that. So I think it's worked out very well. And then at the end of the day, there's all the complexity. So these are complex products. They're slowly becoming a little less complex, but they are still complex investments. I've sat in front of many sharp, successful advisors that had no idea what I was talking about. And so it is going to be a continual process, and it's about making the products as easy to understand as possible. And these platforms have really enabled a widespread education, advisor and client education. And I think that that'll only improve and get better as we move forward.
So Brady, just touching on this quickly with Luma, is education of your end users, is that a big thing for you folks? More specifically to the industry, is that something that structured products providers and distributors can really focus on, or is it more of a we're just delivering these things and putting a solution out there?
Yeah, of course. I think it's kind of part and parcel. So to John's point, we do. Luma does provide some of the compliance training, some of the basic building blocks for advisors to be able to educate themselves on how various product features work. I think what the platforms really have enabled, at least from my experience, is to actually let intermediaries and maybe more importantly, let issuers get past simply responding to requests all day, submitting messages out to see if there's any interest, and actually take it a step further where I say this in a good way. If you commoditize pricing from issuers, it actually frees up the sales desk at the issuing banks to focus more on directly interacting with advisors, educating them on what might be the best, most efficient way to achieve their goals. So I think that's to maybe a larger extent than the basic training and education material, which is very important. It's actually freed up time for both wholesalers and issuers to really focus on, does an advisor fully understand how they can maximize the benefit they get from structured notes?
Got it. Okay. And I'm thinking, Joanne, I mean, I'm sure that you've got some thoughts around the education and the importance of that, once again, feeding onto John's answer that is a key part of getting RIAs on board.
It's absolutely key. The critical issue that I see with it is that the advisor still has to know that they want a note, right? So if they're going to a third-party platform like Halo, Simon, or Luma, they have to have already thought, oh, a structured note is going to do that. Or if they're talking to a wholesaler or a bank. So actually what we've done in the last year is partnered with Money Guide Pro to create a structured note block. Their blocks are education components that advisors go to solve for a unique problem within their client's portfolio. So they have a block on saving for college education or retirement assets or something like that. So we're embedding our education into the places where advisors are looking already for solutions. So, and I think that kind of difference, that like model maker, will really drive adoption of this forward. We need to make structured notes in the places where folks are already looking for solutions. If it just stays in the platform itself where somebody's directed to for CE, I don't see that expanding the market broadly enough or fast enough.
Fair enough. So Henry, let's talk about platforms and distribution. CBOE is obviously, one of the most well-known platforms out there. How are you guys thinking through distribution, both on the derivative space and into the new product area space?
Well, I mean, a good example would be looking at flex options, right? I mean, CBOE's, I've loved flex options for at least 20 years. And in fact, at one point, a couple careers ago, I pitched a flex exchange idea to Gary Katz at the ISE, and he said, these things are never really going to take off. And, what CBOE's doing with flex, as Bill Keefe mentioned, is just kind of evolving that ecosystem to make it as transparent as possible. I mean, one of the cool things that we get to do in our integration with CBOE from our kind of legacy data platform is we're able now to put Greeks on flex RFQs and time and sales in real time, which is a huge leap because, you guys are talking about, kind of not that long ago, it would be a telephone market. You'd call somebody and say, hey, I'm looking for this type of a structure and I'll be back to you in 10 minutes. As things become more efficient and easier to trade, people trade them more. So that's kind of what we're focusing on. I had a question for Brady that something that you made me think of is, so if your system now kind of lets people get a relatively quick response to a request for a market, could things ever get to the point where there's kind of a lit market for these products, or I may not know enough about the space for that question to make much sense.
Yeah, no, if I understand, or maybe I can describe kind of where we're taking kind of the instant ability to see pricing. We actually do make available our concept of a heat map, and what that basically lets advisors do is go through, see basically a grid of different underwires, different iterations, different tenors, and select what might be the best combination of product features for what they want to do. So they can basically instantaneously see all pricing for all different iterations, and also get a sense of different sensitivity based on how you alter product features, whether that be principal protection, underwire, tenor, whatever feature is relevant for that advisor. Two, as far as syndication goes, you can basically start to syndicate deals prior to them being launched, and that's actually been very useful for us as far as the existing or the current, I should say, minimum sizes to launch a deal are still at about $500,000 for most issuers. If you're able to actually kind of break that out across multiple advisors who might not work together, might not be at the same firm, you actually get a lot more issuances than you otherwise would have.
So John, let me ask a question. I mean, just thinking about, okay, once these structured products are issued and a retail investment advisor has one of these products in their portfolio, and they want to liquidate it, what is the importance of the secondary market at the retail level? Is it a big thing? Is it a kind of middle of the ground thing, or is it a very kind of small thing where the investment advisor will pull these things down and hold them until they mature type thing? What's the thinking there?
So,
and in your experience?
Sure. So we're always careful to sell these as, hold to maturity, just because we don't have any sort of guaranteed secondary market for the product. So always stress that. Having said that, there's a good number of advisors that will dip into the secondary market when they think there's a good opportunity to sell out of something and go do something else, with those proceeds. So we're always very careful in educating advisors. The quality of the secondary market, it's critical, right? So we can't just have an orderly secondary market with blue skies and fair weather and no wind, right? So when things get a little choppy, is when advisors tend to see that secondary value and focus on that, and that's when we need the full support of the secondary market. So I'd say it's critical to help gain more and more confidence on the products and the business as a whole. I think that's an important part of it.
Got it. And just to feed on that a bit, and I'll go to Joanna next for a comment on how Halo's thinking through secondary trading. But how are these put on the books? Are they marked to market at the retail level? And how do you get that type of pricing? Is it something that's provided by the issuer, or is it something that Raymond James structures? How are you guys? How is Raymond James thinking about that?
Yeah. So. Yeah, we feel that it's only fair to the client to show them on a daily basis what their secondary market value is. So we'll never hold something apart. We'll always show the secondary. For notes, that gets updated by the issuers daily. As for CDs, I think it's once a week. And so we'll show that. We have to educate them and their clients on that secondary market, why it's a little bit like traditional bond markets, but it's not, right? So there's a little bit of an education process around that, but at the end of the day, we show them that as I always tell advisors and clients, it's their liquidation value. If they felt compelled to sell out of that product that day, that's approximately what they'd receive.
Fair enough. So Joanna, on the secondary market, how's Halo thinking through that? What are your, kind of industry thoughts on that? Is it something that's important? Is it an opportunity, perhaps? What are your thoughts?
You bet it is. It is absolutely critical for broader adoption of these products. The reality is, so the issuer must, by law, provide a secondary market, but they're the only ones that are mandated to. To Henry's earlier question about the idea of offering Greeks on listed options, essentially that's what you're going to need to provide in order to enable a secondary market provider from the outside. And so that's might be something that we're thinking about. And even further, I mean, really, so what we've done so far, again, this is kind of in its infancy, but we have 5 independent market makers that provide pricing on secondaries because of the pain that John mentioned. So the reality is, kind of volatility goes awry and it becomes difficult for issuing banks to even provide you that price. They must, but it becomes difficult and it's pretty ugly. And so we're looking to stand up some third-party organizations that will be able to provide that. Again, I think that's critical for broadening distribution. I know this is really digital driving distribution, but that's exactly it. We need better Greeks and technology to enable third-party players to be able to provide secondary markets here. So absolutely, we've done kind of what we can do for now, which is get a core group of folks to provide those secondaries, and then we'll actually enable them with our technology to serve those markets better and more efficiently.
Great. So John, what would you say the primary risks for the industry are, thinking specifically to compliance at this stage?
Well, good question. So I think
it's the dreaded word no one wants to really talk about too much. But compliance, it runs our lives, and it's there. So
no, absolutely. So I would tell you that while I'm not intimately familiar with all of our competitors' sort of processes around this particular subject, I can tell you that at Raymond James, we're pretty focused on suitability, client suitability. We've got guidelines, per QSIP guidelines, structure, by subtype guidelines, total structured product guidelines for under 65 or over 65 clients. So we have a pretty robust compliance sort of review system in place that we run. I mean, I think last month, if I'm not mistaken, I think we had a little over 6,000 individual tickets that were on our platform for the month of September. That's a lot of suitability to run and a lot of compliance to make sure we have a couple of guys that do a fantastic job of doing that. It takes them about 24 hours. I'm not sure they're getting any sleep during that 24-hour period. But needless to say, I think when regulators come knocking, they're going to be looking. These are the types of questions they're going to be asking. And so I think we have a pretty robust system in place. Obviously, is that industry-wide? I know that it's a little softer, a little stronger in some places. So wouldn't want to talk for anybody else but I can tell you that it's a critical part of our platform and the operations around structured products.
Got it. Okay. And let's think about how technology has kind of already impacted the market. Let's think about what technology-powered distribution looks like. This will be probably more relevant to both Joanna and Brady, but maybe Joanna, why don't we start with you, and then we'll get Brady to fill in, kind of any pieces that he sees in addition to what you're looking at right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the concept of the self-driving car, right? The more that we can have advisors armed with the right tools to be able to serve themselves, be able to capture volatility and the right kind of market timing for them, depending on what they buy, the better. So technology drives distribution insofar it enables the advisor to find the right trade at the right time for the right client. So we have actually, I would say probably 3 tools that really focus on that streamlining of distribution. First and foremost, there's a tool on the Halo platform that creates trade ideas based on AI and scraping volatility surfaces. So we're looking to pair up the right underlying and the right maturity based on what the market is telling us, and then serve that idea up to an advisor in a category and categories by with the advisors think. So we've really pretty sophisticated idea generation, and that's all custom idea generation. Again, within the right framework for a broker dealer that says, not this, I can do that, we don't want to do this. So we can kind of put those guardrails over on top of that infrastructure. The second thing that we've done to really drive distribution forward is our crowdsourcing tool. So we will allow advisors to sort of tack on or crowdsource notes that are already going to print. And that significantly eases the burden on our issuer partners and provides a great opportunity for them to size up the book with all of the work that they have already done, right? So cost to issuers as the people in the seats and the cost of the documentation, if you can, within their correct parameters, size up that trade, then that's additional yield for them. Obviously helps us as distributors, and it also helps the end advisor. There always seems to be this constant need for feedback loop from financial advisors that, what are other people doing? And what does this look like? And has somebody already vetted this structure? There's confidence in that. And so especially when we're looking to convert new advisors to this product, typically what we see is not them buying calendar offerings, the sort of shelf products, but rather participating in a structure that a different financial advisor picked out, has already bid out to the street, has already run their own compliance checks on, and is comfortable with. And that's a really great way for somebody to really start And then the third thing is Halo, I think is pretty unique from the other platforms insofar as we have human distribution force facing off to financial advisors in the street today. So we are a human and technology firm in that way. And because of that, because of having them internal, that means that we get a way enhanced feedback loop in terms of how the technology needs to change and drive and what the end financial advisor really wants. When what we've seen is the model to have those folks outside, they're maybe less motivated and interested in enhancing the technology. It's sort of like having a self-driving car company and then hiring third-party people to drive the cars. They don't ever want the car to be self-driving, right? If they're internal to your organization, then they are partners to you. And there is better effectiveness and more transparent feedback loop to drive that distribution forward.
Got it. And Brady, how about you folks at Luma? How are you thinking through this?
Yeah, perfect. And part of my question will kind of relate back to the previous question on compliance. So I'll start with kind of the life cycle experience of what happens after an advisor purchases a note or launches a note. That from that perspective, that has really streamlined the distribution process in that we actually do report today for all the products that we have go through the platform, Greeks on the structure, Greeks on the underliers, as well as a forward-looking Monte Carlo simulation of things that are relevant to know what to do with the product. So chance of principal loss, expected remaining life, even chance of next call, and that can incorporate both issuer and auto call features. So from that perspective, we've really kind of streamlined what an advisor looks at when they're looking at their products, knowing what's coming up for call, knowing what has a higher chance of losing principal. That actually allows them to make quicker decisions on, should I liquidate? Should I start getting ready to potentially launch another note, knowing that this note is very likely to be called? That kind of delves back into the primary side of the business, where, going back to the things I touched on earlier, concepts like the heat map, concepts like automatic pricing, advisors are getting information a lot quicker, a lot more consistently, and they're actually getting actionable information through Luma. Of course, we do have internal folks for support if there are questions on the best way to go about kind of reaching their goals. I think that, to Joanna's point, that never really goes away from a structured product. But a lot of the information that, I think wholesalers were providing, that were a big part of what they were doing, has been automated through the platforms.
Got it. So a question specific to Henry. Henry, let's talk about retail versus institutional in structured products. There's a large gap in institutional dealers adopting the level of systems which retail currently enjoys. So user experience, pricing, all sorts of these great things that great companies like Luma and Halo have developed and successfully rolled out, and others as well. Do you see a shift occurring in that side of the business, and where do you see that fit coming in?
It's interesting, and it's really fun to hear. Like I said, it's kind of a parallel universe to me in some ways. And idea generation on the options side is something that Sivo has a product called LiveVol Pro, which is that's the one thing. I've been in options technology for a long time, and people are like, what's interesting, what's actually going on, and idea generation and trade management have been a hole for a long time, and it's really interesting to see people going at it. And so if the same thing is happening in the structured product world, I think it's awesome, because it's just what Joanna was talking about, like, okay, if this is your view, these are the notes that kind of make sense, and then to take it to the next level is like, oh, by the way, you got killed this month in this part of your portfolio, and and technology can basically help you figure out what what would have actually offset that, and then you can do back testing and everything else. So I think that's just it's a crucial piece of the puzzle, and it's probably the most underserved out of everything, because it's kind of it's so wide open, and so it's open to all sorts of creative approaches, and that's what we put a lot of work into it. We actually have it available as an API as well for option brokers, basically, which are interested in like kind of it's similar, right? Like you have to educate your customers. You don't want them to blow themselves up. That education piece is along with trade design is a weakness. For in the listed side, it kind of has to do with I think just a general hesitancy from the big brokers to train their customers because they're afraid of getting accused of something not suitable. So that may not answer the question about what SIBO's really up to, because I don't have a lot of direct knowledge, but I do think that the whole DIA generation and in a way it's also, I see similarities between the way that the fragmentation in the listed options market is insane, right? We have 16 exchanges. And so technology, I mean, geez, for the last 5 exchanges that came along over the last 6 or 7 years, we used to go to a big trading desk. I go to Goldman and say, oh, by the way, C2 started trading, and they'd look at me and be like, what's that? I'm like, it's another options exchange. And what was amazing is they didn't care because they didn't really need to know, because the technology was solving that part of the kind of workflow for them.
Got it. Okay. Brady, just thinking about blockchain and smart contract technology, the use cases are clearly there for that. Is that something that you think the world of structured products, systems, and platforms is going to adopt going forward, or is it too early to think that way? Is it something that you folks at Luma are exploring? What are your quick thoughts on that?
Yeah, we have been exploring that, and I think it's probably a little bit too early to say exactly how it's going to manifest itself. I think personally, back to one of the earlier questions on the secondary space, to really develop a secondary market, there are certain obstacles that are just inherent to how different counterparties could interact with each other. Seeing the product, of course, you could use the platforms for that. But ultimately, the transacting of secondary structured notes between counterparties, I see a lot of interesting things in the crypto space, not really crypto, but more just the technology itself, that if you have anonymous participants that are able to face each other, that potentially might not otherwise have been able to, we're kind of going down that path, I think. So that's, to me, the secondary space, that's probably where it manifests itself most likely.
Got it. Perfect. And so, Joanna, where does technology need to go for you folks to drive distribution and efficiencies? Are you considering stuff like blockchain technologies, newer systems like smart contracts and things of that nature?
We absolutely are, though I won't comment any further about that, if I may be so bold. Though I would say, ironically, I think the place to drive distribution forward, I think the platforms have done a great job in education, right, as we talked about today. We're doing a better job at streamlining RFQs. At Halo, we're doing a terrific job of trade idea and risk management, focusing on content and risk out to clients. Where I think this actually needs to go to drive things forward is putting better technology at the hands of the issuers themselves. So the reality of all of these custom notes coming through, and even minimums going back up higher than were previously established, we need better technology at the hands of the issuers in order to serve the needs of this growing distribution and the way that the landscape of structured notes itself has changed. And so Halo actually has partnered with quite a few folks and is certainly open to any conversations for issuers that are struggling with how and where they can possibly survive all of these inquiries that they're getting today. So we'd be certainly open to that conversation. But in our view, we've done a great job, again, getting into the ecosystem where financial advisors live and breathe. We're doing that in a really different approach, I would say, than the other platforms. And what we need to do next is make sure that the issuers can be responsive and have the right support underneath it to be able to respond to this inevitable continued growth.
Right. So, we're coming close to the stop moment in this great panel discussion. It's been a very lively discussion. I think just one quick final question, and that is just looking at data breaches and things of that nature. Joanna, why don't we just quickly start with you? What are you folks thinking about that? I know there are a ton of security tools out there. Give you 10 seconds just to run through, and then I'll pass it off to Brady and just what he's doing with Luma on that side.
It's absolutely paramount. So we partner with Amazon Web Services, and partnering with a large organization that is established and has very clear SOC 2 protocols and the rest is fundamental for us to be a successful technology company.
Awesome. Brady, how can you answer that?
Yeah, no, very, very similar actually. We also utilize AWS, and I believe we went through our SOC 2 review a few months ago, and it's of course paramount. It's a starting point that you have to have. So very similar answer. So I don't have much to add beyond that.
Fair enough. Awesome. Look, I want to thank everybody who joined this panel discussion today. For me, this was a real treat being the moderator and learning a lot more about retail structured products, platforms, and systems. It sounds like the world, certainly from our vantage point at Delphax, where we're an institutionally focused new credit product for the markets, retail has really leaped above kind of where the institutional space, and it's really exciting to see, because we think at some point there will be a natural gravitation toward that user experience that's been developed on the retail side. And it just looking at the technology development, the forward thinking strategies, and certainly the innovation, it's great to see. So I want to thank everybody, and it's been a real treat to be part of this.
Many thanks, Patrick, and many thanks to all the panelists. And I would also like to thank all the delegates and colleagues who tuned in for this session. This has been the last day of the panel and of the conference itself. I would like to enjoy this opportunity and thank all our sponsors, as without you, this event would have not been possible. And of course, all of you that have joined us. Over the last 3 days, over 500 delegates heard from 50 industry experts across 13 sessions. We've learned about indexing, ESG, crypto, technology, and distribution channels. We've discussed visions for sustainable future and product trends across the continent. Thanks to the merge of the Index Insurance Forum with SRP Americas conference, we've also looked into annuities and the growing link between different products and industries. Last night, we have also celebrated our virtual awards ceremony, recognizing the best players in the industry over the last year. Congratulations again to all the winners. The awards report is now available to download on SRP. Please note that all sessions, as well as the awards ceremony, are available to view on demand on the platform for the next 30 days. You're also still able to schedule meetings and make connections with your peers. I hope you all have a good rest of the day and that you enjoy the last 3 days of content prepared specially for you by our team. For now, this is a goodbye, and we're looking forward to seeing you all next year. Thank you for joining us. Gracias por estar aquí con nosotros.